Hey, good morning, my neighbors. Welcome to another episode of BYTTT. Before you take the trade, we got a lot to cover, so don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and the bell button because that helps all that algorithmy stuff going on, and we could really share a lot of this content for you. All right, so let's get to the point. I'm not going to start with the dollar. I'm going to start with NQ. You already know that is my favorite. And there goes my baby. That thing is pushing up at a very interesting time yesterday because it's been rough. I had a little bit of a losing streak somewhere in the middle of here, and I was getting myself beat up, especially with J Powell. But I think I'm back on stride. Made 1,000 here, made 1,000 there, and the only 30 bucks there, but that's a whole other conversation. Just kind of toying with proper techniques and everything else. So yeah, it's gonna be a very very detailed video today as we try to really pinpoint all of our action. I hope y'all doing great out there. I really do, because there is a lot of movement that I think is going to happen. I didn't expect we'll push up this far, but this tells me that they may be wanting to get to those new highs. If you know, we've had a nice little December sell off, and that December sell off was very, very aggressive. It even changed seasonality due to the fact that we did not have that March tech rally that we normally do, trapping a lot of more recent bulls. And I won't be surprised if some people are scared to get into the market right now. But when you follow somebody just like me or someone that is going to give you the almost like foresight for you to kind of ask the right questions. Now, I'm talking about these gurus that says, "Hey, I can give you 90% results that you're going to make money." I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about people that are objectively driven to make sure you think for your positions because we're not financial advisors, we're not fiduciaries. We are anticipating and hoping that you're taking some of these words to heart, paper trading properly, and building what is supposed to be a very difficult profession slowly but surely. So we can kind of see that it looked like a real good hammer here, that can give us a nice little push. Anything above 22 300 will probably put some pressure on these pivots right here and could break that trend and really change the character of this downtrend. So if there's anything I would probably toss some money in, it probably would be a break above this trend line because we already tested it, reverse, failed to do the kiss goodbye, and maybe I would just take for the high, but it's going to put in a nasty. If it does, I just don't think the momentum is there. It's going to put a very nasty bearish divergence. So be prepared. All right. You know what I'm saying? If you plan to fail, then what was it exactly? If you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. Yeah, that's the word. There we go. I got it. Second try. I'll edit it out. All right, here's oil. And oil is trying to make its move back up into that upside. Again, I have major doubts that it can hold these levels. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I own a transportation company. Nothing, zero. Absolutely. This is just what the chart looks like. And if you look at it, it is trying to get back to that wick. But if you remember, I told you it takes a micro trend to break a major trend. And right now, this micro trend right here, we're going to go with the deviation. This micro trend is breaking the 2021 major trend sell-off. So this is major to that minor, and this is what we're dealing with. So this whole entire area, whenever I draw trend lines, I don't look at it as the entirety, kind of like what you would normally see, kind of like, oh, well, it looks like this. I kind of visualize it. Let me just expand it out so I can make it make sense. I kind of visualize it like any point of this area can reject, right? And kind of like we're in this zone where it can reject. And of course, if it gets up into here, it'll be more on the profitable side or more of a swing. What it do, Rod? Good morning. And a swing high of it, and it probably could pull back even more violent because of that. So that's how I kind of draw it, just to kind of see it visually. I don't draw it anymore because I look at it kind of like such. So you can see this is a wick at this top area. Depending on how this price action ends 8 hours from now, I anticipate a nice little retest, maybe back into this block at $66. All right, here is gold. Oof, oof, oh, gold. Where are you going? Where are you going? If y'all remember, we kind of did something along the opening range a couple of days ago. He kept on using this order block as a bounce, but it could never make higher highs. So those that kept on buying here, we're part of the people that are out, right? Could not get any higher highs. Really put some effect to anyone that really wanted to make a push to the upside. Now they're coming back to what I deemed a tough level. Remember, I marked this off, and you can see we're getting a little bit of a bounce here, sitting on top of another order block. Now, I'm not saying that gold's going to bounce here. We are breaking micro trends, and it looks like this now minor trend is going to start to become a major trend. Let's go ahead and mark this off. Something like that. And if anything, it's this pivot that we put in here that put the pressure for us to come back down here based on the 15-minute. And those buyers are like, yeah, we've rejected from this area. Again, remember my zone, I expanded out. We rejected off this area. This could be tough. So now this micro trend, that's all I was like, I like my micro trends and major trends. So this micro trend, just tiny, it is such a sweet little baby. It's trying to make its way to the upside and put some pressure on this downtrend. But a nice little cross to the upside here in the stochastic could give us some confirmation. But generally speaking, I think there is more downside, especially if we look at the daily, and you can kind of see we're putting a lot of these red candles, and we want to see what happens with this order block. I don't trade silver, but I always tell you how to chart silver because it kind of tells you, and it looks like they're back in sync. Strong red candle looks like an M pattern. If this M pattern happens on silver and they're back to following in sync and the commodities are moving the same way, look for silver to drag gold down and probably bring us through that order block that I was just talking about. All right, so this is the British pound. British pound is trying to make its way uptown again. Kind of got this imbalance that they want to go with, forming what could be a morning star. It is on top of an uptrend, so it's not going to be as impactful. But if it walks like a duck and it smells like a duck, then it might just be chicken. No, I'm just joking. It might be duck. So we're probably going to get ourselves a nice little rejection at this area, still keeping the major downtrend in its route. But generally speaking, we're probably going to go ahead and try to hold this level and put pressure on the dollar, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Here is ES. We've already filled this gap, so there's not a lot of targets for ES here. So I have a little bit of a question on this. Now, here's one thing I gotta remind y'all too. ES and NQ have times where they move in sync and they run together, and sometimes they diverge and they cross each other. I would say there's some targets that NQ has that could make ES follow suit, because a lot of the top 500 companies are also in the tech sector. So NASDAQ has the top 100 in technology. So there's going to be some synchronicity. I don't know, whatever that word is. There's going to be some connection on how their price movement moves. But the problem that I face here is that when I know there's no targets on ES, it makes me a little concerned for those that trade ES. It's probably not going to support that move for NQ unless NQ is going to be the leader. So make sure you chart it properly as we go throughout this day. All right, so, wrong one. That one. All right, so now we got ourselves, I gotta get my tablet working again so I can be able to control the production. This is the Russell, right? The Russell is doing its job, trying to kind of push to this upside, but I would say if there's anything I want to see ES and NQ start to fall and the Russell start to rise. Then I'll feel like the market's kind of running like really in sync of what it normally is supposed to do, because then they'll be getting out of the major caps. Especially we got 4th of July coming up soon, so make sure you plan your trades properly. And as they get out of the major caps, they toss it into the small caps, they park it for a little bit, and then after the holiday season or when they find a nice low pivot, it starts to push up. But this looks like a really good chart for upside if you really look at it, because the stochastic is already pointing up. The MACD wants to cross up. There is a little bit of a bearish divergence, but was that the pullback so that way we can continue to the upside? Do we have a micro trend? Yes, we do. It hits from here to here, actually probably even here. So let me go ahead and mark this out for y'all. Boom. And it is right here, higher low to the higher high, and they're trying to determine if they can hold this level. This could be a nice little entry to go ahead and put some pressure right against this fair value gap, getting into like 22.52, somewhere around that ballpark. All right, and the last one we're going to discuss, because I got a lot of tickers we're going to be going through. I'm going through my whole entire earnings cycle so that way you can see what I'm looking at. And this is the infamous dollar, the one that kind of drives us crazy, but it's the one that rebalances us and everything else. This does look like a purebred double bottom. There is a little bit of an imbalance here that I want them to target and kind of fill through and even get into this area and really get this W pattern going on. Now, dollar strengthens, market drops. Market drops, strengthen dollar. Strengthened dollar allows for domestic products can be a little bit better when they export it. Hence the reasons of small caps, because small caps are more into the US and you're going to see them pour their money into that when they see the strength into the dollar. So very, very interesting chart here. If we fail to hold that 97.602, we will be dropping further, making tech to rally. But again, this is a lower low. This is a higher low. Bullish divergence. We're probably waiting for some news to kind of go about, which is quad witching is over today. So there's going to be some repositioning. Juneteenth was yesterday, so markets was closed, not the futures market. Hence the reason why we had some fun. If you want to know more details, link is down below. That way you can sign up for the one-on-one. And then we got ourselves a nice little pop, and it should be a good reset for a lot of your favorite tickers. I think Apple needs a reset. It's struggling. I think Microsoft has been running too hot, and they might be taking money out of Microsoft, pour it into like an Apple. Like there's going to be some diversification that's probably going to happen very, very, very soon. So just keep that in mind. So I would love to see this dollar start to push up, put some threat, make people some concerns, but I don't think it's going to happen because this downtrend is very prevalent and it's probably going to continue to push on down. Here's one deviation here, and then here's another deviation right there, and you can kind of see the pressure that is being put, and we're trying to break that, but this is where I'm targeting, and that should be a good reset until we drop again. All right, let's go ahead and get right to it. Like I said, I have a whole entire list. So the past couple of days I've been going through my first month. So what I'm going to do today is kind of go through my second month of the cycle. Again, this is not a perfect science of tickers. This is just things that I look at just to kind of get a little idea of where the market is going and if there's any opportunities on particular tickers. And then if anything, I'll probably go QQQ for indices if I need to. So let's start with the biggest one that I have here. It is Eli Lilly. If you don't know who Eli Lilly is, this is the company that made a lot of people not want to go to the gym, and gym memberships are going to go down. No, I'm joking. At the end of the day, they create the Ozempic or one of them, Manjaro or whatever. The shot that goes and lets you lose a little bit of weight, which was supposed to be a diabetic medicine, but they found a way to use it for something else, kind of like Viagra. But anyways, nice little pop to the upside here. What I'm concerned about this is that this has been a downtrend since the middle of August 2024, as they're trying to kind of hold this up, but more competitors are coming into the space, right? Like I said, I think they're the ones that created Ozempic. Manjaro's the new one, and there's others that starting to do that Chat GPT one, whatever it's called, right? To rebalance your whole entire calorie intake and help you lose weight. Now the problem that is here is like we're trying to make these pushes up, right? Like right there, we got a nice little imbalance, But for some reason, we're coming back into the imbalance. All right, let's see if there's anything here. Well, we got an order block here, but looks like a W pattern that probably panned out, right? So maybe this is what they were looking for. If you don't know how to measure out a W, you always go for the shorter side. Do not go for the longer side, just to keep yourself a little bit less greedy. And then you go to this area. And to be honest, I like to take only 50% of that whole entire move. I don't like to take the whole thing, because if I take the whole thing, I might be the one holding the bag. Now, granted, this continued, but I'd rather take that with runners and take most of my position out at 50%. And you can kind of see, nice solid trade. So it could have been that this is just traders pulling this back because they took their position, they're out of it. Maybe. But I could tell you this is also a micro trend, and this could be trying to turn its tide. So let's see if this actually holds and puts some pressure on this gap, this pivot, or this pivot right here. So look for Eli Lilly to retest this trend line, especially with the stochastic pointing down. Spotify. Now, Spotify has been on a run for a long period of time. I've kind of doubted it because it was like putting like a bearish divergence here. I didn't think we were going to get this next pop here. I saw this kind of coming and doubted it. But I would say this micro trend looks like a rising wedge. And if you know anything about rising wedge, it's usually the backside of the wedge is what you want to measure. And when it finally falls, it's going to do something along the lines of that. So I do think we're going to get a Spotify around 550. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, because even the MACD is putting this divergence. We're not going to get the peak of this over here unless some crazy contract is signed on Spotify like they did with Joe Rogan. Yeah, so just keep that in mind. This one's more for personal consumption. It doesn't really move as an option, same as Domino's Pizza, but this one is in the middle of a sell-off. Home Depot, it looks like it's rejecting an order block. I think I marked this from the weekly. Yeah, I think that was the weekly when I did this. And you can kind of see this is a very tough zone. Back in 2021, 2025, we got above. I thought it was 2024, but to right at the edge of. Oh, actually, I'm right. 2024. So right at the edge of 2024, this is our December sell-off. So again, what you want to kind of do, all right, well, if this is a December sell-off, then that means I could take two candles. Yeah, this one's a little egregious, but we're going to go ahead and go with that angle. Could they be following this angle? That is a possibility. Then you take your deviations where necessary. Well, this one kind of tweaked the angle a little bit. So now we got ourselves a deviation like this. There's your lower high to a lower low, and they made a micro trend. And when they got to that order block, the bottom of the order block, there was like, no, smack, they pushed it right back down. So when you see things like this could be a perfect bump and run level where we kind of reverse and continue to the upside. But when you're missing earnings by a little bit, it scares shareholders. I listen, you miss EPS, revenues is there. I'm anticipating next quarter your EPS is going to be a lot more sound. So if this one you could do an investment into, very possible. Home Depot is not going nowhere. This is not like some fintech or anything like that. They're always going to be people that wants to build, and they get a lot of these contractors from contractors, so they're always getting their supplies. So I would say this is more of an investment at the 200 than for me to actually get away from here. Let's look at it daily, see how this looks. Yeah, it's already at the bottom here. So all I would like to see, if this is going to pan out, is a nice little solid reversal on the MACD, maybe some price action sitting at my 800 EMA, and then that could probably give us some more pressure to take out that order block and see if it can get some new highs. Carvana. Actually, I'm always shocked that I see Carvana, and actually I didn't even plan to have this on one of my lists. It was one day I saw that it popped up that they had earnings coming, and I was like, oh, well, this thing should be down to the dirt, because who's buying cars on Carvana? Well, it looks like after all their scandal and everything else, they found a way to rebrand and restructure or whatever, but they are returning money to shareholders, which is very, very important. So with consistency like that, I don't know how they're doing it, and if you know the story about it, they kind of also did back here and their tactics was highly questionable, and that's when the scandal kind of happened. But anyways, they're back to, oh damn, this thing is not playing. It looks like they're about to get into those highs. Maybe they're starting to reap the fruition of everything that they plan to do with Carvana. If you don't know who they are, they're the ones that have those big buildings, and it's like car vending machine. They mail you a coin and your car's already there. Let's put it in there, and then it just rotates down. Really fun to kind of experience. But how many times are you buying a car like that, or buying a car period? So experiencing that is for one is one thing, and I don't know, so gimmicky. So looking at this ticker, looks like a morning star. It looked like they trying to push it up, going into the gap, got an imbalance that's here. I would say if there is any more that they're looking for, maybe around that 334, 35 is probably the end of it, because this is an order block, and that could give you that very massive double top. That'll be crazy. But again, like I said, I find very large question marks on how are they profitable, and all they're doing is buying cars from individuals like us and selling it back on the market. And supposedly it's cheaper than most used car sales. But we'll see. Coinbase, this thing has done something crazy. I promise I'm going to make a short on this, because I think we had a conversation of a possible breakout here. Yes, I do have an M pattern here, but I did say micro trend can hold. This is a deviation to that, and depending on how they see it. And we did a massive push up on Wednesday, and I have no idea what was driving Coinbase, other than the fact that Bitcoin is still moving to the upside. Again, they have other coins, they have other investments, so you still want to look at this ticker in its totality. Do not just look at the Bitcoin chart and then just run to this one. Okay, just do your due diligence. Right now it's past the target, because I had some targets when we was running up to this level, 288, 298, and then probably some of these wicks here was some of the targets. But we are putting something very massive. If this thing does not pull back to this trend line, actually I can move this line. Let me do that now, because this was a micro trend, right? Yep, this was a micro trend, so I had it built on here. So technically this is our pivot back on Friday, and this gap up all the way to here broke this downtrend, and then we broke what was the pivot break of structure right here. So this is kind of done, because we not only took that out, we took that one out. We came for this. Oh man, this is just an amazing looking chart for anyone that just jumps into this doggone thing before this pops off. It's almost like we exploded out of an order block that was this wide. Like we was gonna go for this gap, and I think that's why I drew this. And I was like, well, some gaps can be rejected, and it looked like they rejected before the gap, and this is where we are today. So I want to see how much buyers are still in here. If there is any buyers still in here, it's probably going to target somewhere around that 325, maybe even all-time highs. Keep an eye on that. DoorDash, rising wedge action, new highs, bearish divergence, lots of things that can go against it. If we did draw a trend line from here to here, capture our deviation from here. Yeah, that made a higher high, so that's perfect, right? This break below with a break above, it's that they're finding weakness. I would have rather they tested this level back at like 213, 210, and then bounce, than for them to get back onto this deviation, because we're getting a little too vertical. Let's see what the weekly has. I'm curious. Yeah, it looks like a doji here. Depending on how today finishes, unless they make a massive move and grabbing liquidity, I probably stepped in. I would say maybe coming back to 210. We got a little bit of a fair value gap remaining. It's very tiny on the weekly, so yeah, it's not looking good. Again, rising wedges. What did I tell y'all? You want to measure it from the base of the wedge to the peak here, and this would be your drop off if it broke with some strength. Maybe it will happen here, because we open pre-market a little bit higher, or if you want to be conservative, maybe down here. So yeah, probably come back to like 176 if it does the full move. Again, I think the 200 level is going to be tough. So maybe 50%, like 195, probably is what DoorDash can do. Lowe's does not look as healthy as Home Depot, but the charts are very similar. But I would say for the most part, this thing could break its support and make some moves to this downside. What do I have these trend lines? I probably charted it a long time ago on this chart. That micro trend got broken really well. We're coming off of October 2024 sell-off. Let's get this captured. Let's see this is hold. Yep. So this is our downtrend with a little bit of a deviation from here. Get there. And get there. Right? So this is, and it's not perfect. It's not perfect. But you could see this was that struggle roughly around May 20th. And then we had a nice little rejection. It looks like an H. But this can really turn into a double bottom, especially with the stochastic being here. So just keep an eye on lows for a potential bounce. But if it breaks this level, I would play this to the downside. Amazon. Now, Amazon is annoying as crap. They just announced the Amazon Prime Day. It's going to be July 8th, a little after 4th of July. So I think we could get ourselves a little bit of a run. May come back to 208 for a retest of this order block. And I'm anticipating a run through 220, maybe even 230. But we'll see what happens from there because Amazon Prime usually runs. But yeah, I don't know about this area here if it can give a nice little run because they kind of failed to hold this level. And we'll see what happens there. This is Snow. If you don't know, I've talked about Snow, Datadog, Palo Alto. I almost said Palantir. Palo Alto, and CrowdStrike. Those are like that orbit that I always kind of chart when I'm looking at cybersecurity and those package software stuff. And you can see we're really at the lower register of the stochastic. They would not let this thing just drop. And their competitor, DDOG, is really moving, right? So I'm looking at Snow to kind of like really make this move to this upside. I think I was looking for something in particular over here. This would bring us deeper into this gap, which I think they're trying to fill the entirety of that gap. That pivot right here at 235, I don't think they're going to get it, but it'll be very interesting if they did because that would probably trigger new highs. AutoNation for personal consumption. Google. Now Google, what was supposed to be like a bear flag is not turning into a bear flag. It looks like we're going to get ourselves a solid little bounce here. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to get up into that gap. This is when Google made that massive move to the upside, put in that bearish divergence. We found support, but we kind of swept under key support at that 150 level. Could that be the reason why we came under 150? Was just so that way they could get the best price possible for some of the brokers? Maybe. Right now we're sitting on top of a micro trend. You already know how I like my micro trends. That's this one here. This major trend to the downside was capped off here until they made the lower low over here. And when we broke through here, this is part of that April rally. Whatever the reason, it just looks really good for more upside. I would say if it can get above 188, we're going to test that gap. But I think this order block is going to be relatively tough, especially going into the second half of the year. AMAT. Very interesting. I kind of remember me doing this. So I was explaining with downtrends is that it takes a micro trend to break a major trend. This is a perfect example of that. All it takes is basically 2 touches. I think I probably readjusted the trend line here, but the original trend line probably was these 2 here. Let's zoom back out. So with this whole entire downtrend being where it is right now, and actually I could probably adjust this to really here. Actually, I did have it right. I can't see it with that question mark. And it just really looks like it's ready for some upside. If you haven't watched AMD, AMAT is Applied Materials. They provide some of the stuff that you normally see inside of your AMD chips and everything else. So this could be one of the reasons why we're pushing up like this. So as you get into quad witching, this might be at a solid discount here because we have been dropping since August of 2024. And just like this exercise was explaining, it takes a micro trend to beat a major trend. And this is your micro trend, higher high, higher lows. And then it broke right here. They tried to recapture it. They said no, but that was that micro trend that made that higher high. So you follow it, and then it broke it again. Not only broke it, it gapped down, created this micro trend, which is what it followed. Probably was built off of here. Wonder where the rest of it is. All right. Well then, let's go ahead and just put a new one. All right, built onto this micro trend right here, and then they broke it again. And micro trend, and then micro trend, and then micro. And so, if you ever feel like you're catching knives, put the micro trend on and see what it's doing to you, and it's probably going to say, okay, you're just inside of no man's land as far as that trend line, especially as you're trying to play to the trend line. And this one right here, they broke them down just to give a crazy looking deviation of an uptrend here, and that kind of gave you that touch here and then reject. So yeah, just see where the market is in its totality. Squeeze the chart a little bit. All right, QCOM. Now QCOM is the company. They even used to make phones, but they make a lot of the chips for the phones that you have. I want to say Apple has their own chips in their phones, or is it just their laptops? But they used to use Qualcomm chips. A lot of Android companies use those chips. Qualcomm is really big in the space. So this thing does look like we kind of created almost like a falling wedge type action until it kind of reversed. So it kind of rounded out that bottom. I would say, generally speaking, it's not ready for anything, but they're trying to establish themselves. I think they really want to get to that 166, but this 200 moving average is basically saying no more. And we are putting in a solid continuation, but the histogram is making bearish divergences. So very interesting spot. Wix, personal consumption, NVIDIA. Okay, if we can't talk about chips, if we're not talking about NVIDIA, I drew this line since here. We've been on this line. I don't know when the last time I looked at this chart, but it had to been maybe mid-May. And you can see we broke the micro downtrend. They want this pivot, okay? And I'm just to let you know this now. The bulls want this pivot. They want to get up there. They want to be able to like put some real pressure here. And if you look at it, we got ourselves a bullish hidden, right? And this thing is trying to scoop up and probably attack that 148. Actually, let me put this in my list. I'll probably set something up. Let's see, NVIDIA. A NVIDIA 160 calls probably, but buy some time because they're going to attempt to get to new highs. September, December will be too expensive, I think, especially if this fails to really get to that upper register, because I think that bullish hidden divergence can reverse. Let me see what the weekly has. Oh yeah. If that MACD really keeps that strength, the last time, kind of give you a little bit of an insight. The last time the MACD got under here, and then we broke through the zero line on the weekly, was back here in the middle of January 2023. Just to kind of give you a little insight. Again, previous results or previous gains, or however that term is said. I can't, hold on. Previous gains do not, or historical data, whatever that term is. Again, I'm not a financial advisor, but whatever happened in the past does not guarantee it's going to happen in the future. But this does look really good. Now, remember, the stochastic was up here too, just like it was up here too. Could they be setting up for a remix of that same thing? Remember, the market rhymes. It does not do exactly the same thing. It's just going to sound like, look like, and move like that. So if that actually does occur, I would say maybe come to the daily. The safer entry will be when it breaks the 148 and then you just play for new highs. But if you want to be a little aggressive, maybe keep the stop loss tight to this trend line. Current price action is here, so stop loss around 134, but that means you're swinging for the fences. I would say better safe than sorry. Get to that 148, 149 level. Let it close with some strength. Let that stochastic start to get into that upper register, and we may pin it. But I do think when that new high happens, we're probably going to be putting in a bearish divergence and start to pull back. And we don't know if that bearish divergence is going to have legs to it. All right. Palantir. This one had a nice little falling wedge. I was breaking this down in one of my classes, and they just swept it one more time, and it's just been taking off ever since, right? Let me get rid of this drawing for right now. Nice uptrend. Of course, the micro trend was too vertical, so it had to like consolidate a little bit, or it falls back to the trend line. That's how this works. But this is the uptrend now. It's kind of like in no man's land. This does not mean for you to just jump into Palantir right now. But again, they get a lot of these government contracts. They're solid. It is in this upper register, so it does make me a little concerned. Let me see how the monthly looks. Too new of a company to really get enough data to trust what's going to happen. So yeah, I would say maybe a little bit of a pullback to the trend line and just follow the trend until it breaks. That's it. And we'll just roll that way. ELF is for personal consumption. I don't trade it. Now, Clorox, I was going to trade it. It's a little bit of a hit or miss. Their contracts aren't the greatest, but they're solid. But if you get it right, you could get these drops and these pops. And I saw this like in mid-May, but it was very, very choppy here, very, very choppy here. And I was like, all right, I'm going to just leave it alone because I don't think it's going to come down. This is their earnings. Again, I don't think this is relatively bad. Their guidance was probably what was bad. But again, actually, let me do something for y'all. Because when I say Clorox, the first thing that probably popped in your head is like, damn, they get traded in a stock market? Like, what are they? But Clorox is a company, and they do a lot of things because they bought a lot of things. Kind of give you a little sense. Where is it? No, not this one. I think it's their brands. Liquid Plumber. They got other stuff in there. Where was it? You know what? That's what Google's for. Clorox products. Company. Okay, there we go. Clorox company. Brands. There it is. Right? So they got a lot of different things that they're into. Like they're in Hidden Valley Ranch. I think they probably bought them. Burt's Bees for wellness. Fresh Step, Glad, Kingsford Cold. Like I don't think they actually made them itself. I think they just purchased them. I don't know their company history, but if you really think about it, it's not what you think it is. It's not just only Clorox. So they have other stuff. All right. So I think whatever's going on, they probably maybe they need to diversify a little bit. Maybe get rid of the bad products that's on there because whatever the shareholders are doing, they're pulling back based on whatever guidance. Maybe they announce something during the earnings call. Again, I'm a technical analysis. I do not listen to the earnings calls unless I'm invested in something in particular, and this is not one of them. But this one right here, it's probably going to try to test some levels. I don't like this. Ooh, wait. Ooh, lordy. I did not notice that. We're in this gap. We are in this gap. Look for Clorox to probably get into that 115 area. Let me see pandemic. 2018. Even well, you know what? I take that back. The pandemic wouldn't have anything because people bought a lot of Clorox products to clean up around the house because they were afraid of germs. So this one was a little bit more solid during the pandemic. But oof. We're back into this 2022 levels. Of course, this is like after the pandemic, and we are threatening to get into like 2018 and this sub level maybe like 115. So if this gap fills and the momentum doesn't stop, it may get under 115. All right, let's keep this going. So I already talked about Datadog. Looks good. I like what is going on. Very nice pop here. I think they want this gap. Being late to the party in the sector. Very, very interesting ticker. Reddit. I was just watching a video on Reddit. It did not make a higher high on this day, but they are trying to turn a profit, and they're getting there. Their guidance is over here. For increase in revenue, yeah, there's a couple of surprises here. I would love to see Reddit test this trend line one more time before they get into this gap, and I'll probably consider getting in. Otherwise, a break above this structure at 146 for a target of like 175 would be probably the move. Let's see what the weekly has. Yeah, nice cross on the MACD. It would be interesting if this closes inside the fair value gap by the end of the day. So let's see if we can close above 142. Above 142, look, pre-market hit the brakes right at 142. Amazing. I'm talking about 142 on a dot. If we could close above 142 today, maybe we'll fill the rest of the gap into 154. Gives you a little cushion to take out the wick here and test the next fair value gap. That is what I'm probably going to be keeping an eye on. What else we got? This one, oh, my second one is a heavy list. Oh man, let's see. We got 17 minutes. We'll get through it. Disney, they're starting to do some strides to get back to their normalcy, I guess. But the only thing I don't like about Disney, again, being someone that's in Florida, all their prices are going up. It's almost like a whole entire salary for you to enjoy a nice little weekend with your family over there. So I can see, like, as a person that's in Florida with Florida discounts, and guess what ends up happening? You got people that's from out of state and out of the country. They got to really, really plan accordingly, or they're going to be paying a hefty bill. Not kind of airfare. So I don't like where it is now as a whole. I think its best days are kind of behind them. I don't like what they're doing with some of the things because I'm a big Disney fan. The Marvel series and everything else. I feel like they need something. So it's like it's still good product. It's probably sitting on the pot right now stewing, but something is just missing. Maybe some extra spice, maybe some pepper, maybe something crazy like what Microsoft did by acquiring Activision, so that when they get into the gaming space, I don't know, something is not okay here. So we're back to that 2024 peak here. If you don't know, Disney was all the way up into here. This is the same company that owns companies like ESPN. They're trying to divest, but then they bought Hulu, they bought Fox. That's why you got some of the products, because Fox is getting out of the content space and the distribution. Instead of them building a whole streaming platform, they just sold and just focus on solely news that they are questionable as far as its entirety, but we'll digress on that. Yeah, that make a lower low here. It did not make a lower low here. Okay. I thought it did. Let me see. Oh, wait. Down here. Okay, it didn't make a lower low. All right, so let's see. We've been breaking out of the downward trend, and it looks like we're not using this peak as that. It looks like we're gonna be using this peak over there, and they've tested it numerous times. Kind of looks like a W pattern right in here, but again, I'm finding a lot questionable with Disney from a content stuff, and I need them to sell more tickets into their movies and stop flopping on those things, especially the Marvel content. You bought Fox for X-Men. Come on, put it together. Let's get something going. And I'm talking about good products, please. And that's probably what's going to go ahead and attack some of these trends. Of course, these are destroyed. These are destroyed. Let me be completely objective right now. So if this is our lower point here. So that means we got ourselves a micro downtrend from here to here. So that would be that drop here to that drop here. And I think that's your core investors stepping into the plate. So our deviation from that is part of that whole April run up as investors are coming back into the market. So probably right around here. And then we got ourselves this here. And here. Yeah, something along the lines of that. That's probably what it is. That's probably what it is. And if we can hold that, maybe retest that trend line, then get back to 125. But until then, I am going to sit on the sidelines and I want to see them break above there. All right. AMD. This thing is making some monster moves. I think it's all buoyed by everything that you see from NVIDIA, AMAT, and we're going to need chips for AI. I think that April pullback was just a way for everybody to kind of get in, and you can kind of see, hasn't looked back since. Dell, I traded very sparingly. I got an old breakout over here. Let's get rid of that. Don't really care for the company. I think their product is average at best, but you know, if you're going to get a computer for your kids, you're going to get them a Dell. You're not going to get them a MacBook, right? Very cost effective. They probably could destroy it, and you don't have to feel like you broke the bank. It breaks this pivot here, because I think that pivot is what created. Maybe that's why I left that alert there, right? It breaks this pivot here. We're probably going to really take off and take this gap. That's probably what's there. So we'll see. Shopify, a good ticker once in its days, especially during the pandemic. Had some very, very massive moves back in the days. But they're starting to really consolidate a lot. Barely miss EPS. Brings in a lot of revenue, but I think they just have to clean up their books a little bit and they'll be fine. But again, they partner with companies like Amazon and everything else. So this kind of works in sync with Amazon. So just keep that in mind. Crocs, I want this thing to fall to the dirt, but it's sitting right on top of an order block. I think they're terrible shoes, but that's my opinion. I think it could bounce here, and then we probably could get back into this 123 for that gap. Let's see this. Nice little micro trend here. They try to set it off here, and they did again here. They're trying to break through the box. If it stays above the box after trying multiple times, and this is like 2 times that they got under the box and then it got bought right back up, look for Crocs to kind of go ahead and go for that gap, which will bring us into that 137. Roblox is on a tear. I wouldn't touch it right now. I'm having a hard time being able to see what I want to do with it. They don't bring money to shareholders, right? So I think this is just a lot of Reddit-like action. People just like the stock. I think the bottom is going to fall out eventually on this. So just be careful with it if you are going to get into it. If you're an investor into it, dollar cost average, please. You know, start something small. Because this thing's got to come down a little bit. Let's see if this weekly looks like party just started. I don't know what they're targeting. Could they be targeting new highs? Maybe, but I just don't like how vertical this looks. Walmart kind of put in like a little bit of a double bottom here. This April buy up is not holding as well as other tickers. This is one of those recession type of proof companies. The gap is the rejection. I think that's what happened here, and they're trying to see if they can go ahead and get a little bit of a continuation, but I don't know. I don't think so. All right, so let's just call it microtrend, right? So if we're looking at this microtrend here, come on, behave. Right? If we're looking at this microtrend here, it could be that they're just having a little bit of a struggle here. And if that is the case, it might just go ahead and just dump down even further, come into this fair value gap, maybe the 200 because we broke under the 50. Again, it's just too good of a company in itself as far as a standpoint. I would never walk into a Walmart. I hate going into it. It's too damn big. There's not enough lines. They did put some of these automatic registers that you can scan for yourself, but I get these cartoon characters that can't operate a register, and the line feels even longer. Anyways, so as a ticker, they move products, they bring money to shareholders. That's what you want to see. When I see them lose money here on revenue, it just tells me they do more with less. So I'm looking to see if they're going to do well going into this quarter. Yeah, we'll leave it as such. Not touching anything in China. I just have it in here just to kind of see what happens. Let's look at this monthly. Yeesh. Not easy to trade China. Not at all. All right, Uber. Another on my list of companies I don't care for, to say it nicely. But yeah, we got a nice little drop here after getting to that 95 level. I think it needed a cool down. Again, they are returning money to shareholders. That's all people care about. They're doing more with less. That's what they care about. Let's see if they can get to that 12 billion after saying they're going to get to 11 billion and missing, because can't keep lying to people. But they lied to their drivers. Anyway, so I could have let that go. I could not let it go. But yeah, nice little uptrend. Could be a pullback. Could be a bull flag, to be honest. Maybe get a nice little curl in the middle of the stochastic, cut through the 50% and continue to the upside. Let's look at the weekly. Weekly is a little tired. Lots of selling pressure that's happening here. So I'm going with more downside than upside. But again, this is a strong move, especially after they broke that 40 level, which I think that 40 level was the IPO level. Yeah, their IPO level was like around 40. And that's where everything kind of piled on. Hood, another one that is questionable in their tactics. This one, I got out of my Hood position a little prematurely. I really think they can get this 85 level. The reason is, when they IPO'd, they shot up and then they dropped. This version and UI of Hood in 20, like if you ever played or the market using Robinhood, it was very elementary, very basic. Get into the trade, get out. You can't even see a chart. You had to have a trading view next to you. This version of Hood, I'm not going to lie, it makes E-Trade, Power E-Trade look like a joke. So I think that's what investors are excited about. I think the revenues are going to come in. I think they're going to take a lot of the market cap. I don't think they're going to get things like Thinkorswim, because their desktop version, I don't know if they have one, but their web version is average, like just any other one. But if they had a desktop version that kind of came for like a Thinkorswim, which is going to be a very heavy lift in itself. If you know the history of Thinkorswim, it was built by those that made Tasty Trades, and the people that's involved with NinjaTrader, all like they are very vested in that, and Thinkorswim is very robust. Those people are what built Thinkorswim, and it's an older model, so it's going to take some work for them to try to build something like that. But for the new age, the young kids, the under 30 year old, if they don't know no better, they'll be like, wow, this is amazing. I remember Robin was like good and it was crap, but now I can really trade, and I see some of the stuff I see on YouTube, like JD the Great and everything that he posts. So hit the like and subscribe. And he posts these charts, and I can finally draw a trend line and follow him along without paying for something like TradingView. That is what is happening with Hood. So I think some of that cap is coming out, and they're going to go ahead and really take off to these levels. Nice little solid month here. Let's go with the weekly. Yeah, I like what I'm seeing here. I really do, and I think we could get to 85. After 85, you're talking about $100 Hood at the very least, because there's nothing but clear skies up here. All right, let's keep this going. CCJ, we're going into clean energy. When Biden Build Back Better bill was getting tossed around, it looks like uranium kind of still held. Still return money to shareholders. Guidance is up. Revenue, so I think they're probably going to cut some jobs, if anything. But we'll see what happens here. It is at all-time highs, I think. Let me go to the monthly. Yeah, it's at all-time highs. And yeah, just going to have to see what happens. Oh, I didn't realize that on the monthly. We're about, in 10 days, we're about to put a very massive, massive fair value gap. Where's my box? Wrong thing. We're about to put in a very massive fair value gap. I want to see some follow through to this. Maybe 90, 85 without me being so egregious and going for 100 on CCJ. Even though they miss earnings. I look at the fundamentals. Look at that monthly. Look at that Stoke and the Mac. It's, oh my, yeah, dude, this is, and there will be some pullbacks because of the weekly. Maybe get a reset, maybe get some consolidation. But if you get enough time on this to let this monthly cook, and you could maybe get like a doji here, then a test of new high, and that new high gets into that 81. Maybe go with some December contracts. CCJ looks good. All right, let's keep this going. Affirm. We got like 2 minutes. Might not be able to go through this list. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to speed round this. We're going to speed round. Let's get through it. All right. This list was very heavy. All right. So nice solid move. I'm probably going to have to do it as a 2-part next class. Probably coming for this fair value gap. Got to get through this order block. Again, this is in the buy now, pay later thing. Really, really questionable. Same as Upstart. If they found a way to go ahead and circumvent some of the losses, probably could get into here. I think that's what the sell-off is. They're starting to show they're losing. They're returning money to shareholders. Wonder how. CMG, Chipotle, did their split. Has yet to really rebound. I think people are accumulating back those shares. Could this be part of that accumulation phase? Let's see how this micro trend takes out this major trend. So far they did, and now they want the pivot. Got to get past this 200, so maybe a close above the 200 will be good. Occidental, staying away from oil. This is the one that Warren Buffett's in. Unless you're investing, do not trade this thing because I think it's going to get a little volatile, especially with the way oil looks, if you were here earlier in my show. Wayfair used to be the darling during the pandemic. This thing has dropped off of a cliff, and it is not cute. Just like Restoration Hardware that I talked about earlier, look for this bad boy to try to get up into here, but it's not going to go relatively far, so just bear with it. Toast, really, really good for POS system. Kind of challenges Square for their restaurant segment, but it's really, really good software. A lot of restaurants I go to has Toast. DraftKings, I think this is all because of the NBA Finals getting one last push. When that finals is over, Stanley Cup's over, we're going to go into that season where it pulls back. If you don't believe me, here's June. Just watch. August is when football season starts to kick up, and then December is when you get ready for Super Bowl. All right, Keurig, yeah, just there for personal consumption. Fiverr, same. Lyft, I kind of chart this to kind of see what Uber would do, but you could see Uber looks better than that. They're more domestic. So when we start to get into small caps, maybe they'll go into a Lyft. Rivian. This one is not looking too hot, but it looks better than Lucid. And y'all seen what I showed y'all last time with Lucid. I would say if this thing can hold this base, then you got a lot of these investors here, and that could be your micro trend and continue to the upside. Ford is Ford. Invest in it, don't trade it. It has opportunities, but it's here and there. Snap, advertising revenue is going down. Their usage is going down. EPS is going down. Not the best thing. You can look at the chart overall. It's struggled. I just have it on here because I want to know if they're going to rebound and turn into the next Facebook. Doesn't look good. Cleveland Cliffs, another Build Back Better one, but their sector is not getting that bounce, just like uranium. So see what happens with that. Peloton, another pandemic darling. Yeah, I wonder, have you dusted off your Peloton? But yeah, this thing right here, gotta get out of this downtrend. I still chart it because it's just very entertaining to see where I came from. Maybe get us another drop, get a deviation if it breaks this structure. So watch out for I'll be bearish on the 465. I'll be bullish. You know what? Let me be very conservative for anything bullish. I'll be bullish above $10 in 2022. And then Lucid, this is one we was just talking about. It is not looking good. It is putting a bullish divergence, but again, these investors are even out. So kind of let y'all know where Lucid is sitting. And again, the problem is it's a very, very pretty car. I love their car, but the problem they have, a lot of issues, bad reviews, support and servicing is not the greatest. And the last person I talked to that had a Lucid, they had to hit the lemon law on it because they tried to fix the same thing 4 times in a row. Didn't work out. If you don't know lemon law, 3 times it's a lemon. And yeah, they had to give him his money back. It's just a very, very bad thing. So yeah, just looking at Lucid here, I would love to see it bounce here. Got a bullish divergence that's forming here. Very, very small. Actually, I take that back. It was over. Where did I see that bullish divergence? Might have been old. Actually, no bullish divergence. Let's take that back. Let's rewind that. We had a nice little peak here. Maybe it was just this one, but I again, it ain't going nowhere. Even if it was this one right here, because we had a nice little peak and a drop down here, and then they try to reverse it here. It's still not on par, right? It's just really, really, really bad spot. Anything under $2, this thing needs to be on the OTC at this point. Maybe they'll do a reverse split. Let me see what their share float is. Yeah, they could do a reverse split. If they did a reverse split, it'll minimize the shares, get it under $1 billion, maybe a 2-to-1, get into that 600 million, and then you'll probably get this into the $5, attract new investors, and this base would look a little bit better. All right, that said, I did kind of spill over. I appreciate all of y'all chiming in with your boy. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and the bell button. Down below is the one-on-one. It goes all the way to June 30th, so there's only 10 days left. And if you have any questions, go ahead and DM me. I'm on social media, Instagram, everything else. Don't forget to comment. I appreciate y'all, and I'll see y'all on Mindset on Saturday. Y'all have a great day. Peace.